All right, welcome to Build Your Village. This is an interview series where I talk to women about raising kids and raising consciousness. I'm so excited to bring you my guest today, Amy Erez. She is a Reiki master and wellness mentor. She's applied concepts of conscious parenting in her life and work for over 35 years. She has a BA in psychology and Oriental studies. Amy and her husband, Ofer Erez, co-founded Diablo Valley School, a democratic Sudbury model school for ages 5 to 19 in Concord, California. The 3 R's of the school are respect, responsibility, and resourcefulness. I love that. The school opened its community in January 1997 and continues to serve their local community. Amy's professional career also encompasses a wide variety of approaches. She teaches Love Instead of Fear, Reiki, A Course in Miracles, Taoism, and the healing practices of Tai Qigong, and acupressure, the game of gifts, flower essence, therapy, family constellations, and a whole lot more. Her work as a movement specialist teaches how to live from a place of ahimsa, nonviolence, in all that we do. Her website is sugihealth.com. And Amy is just multifaceted they also have a garden at their house. I've been fortunate to see Amy for many years. Our whole family actually sees Amy, so she is very near and dear to our heart. She's helped us through so many challenges in our life. And so I just want to welcome you, Amy. Thank you so much for joining me today. And everyone is in for a treat. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. It's nice to be here.
So we are going to get started in just exploring a bit more about your experience. I want to hear from you what your dynamic has been like as a mom, as a woman in business, and just if you can kind of give people a sense of like where you are right now in your life.
Okay. Yeah. Well, where I am right now as a mom is I have a 27-year-old son, and he is still living on the property with us. We have a half acre where we built a secondary building so that he could move out of the house. He just didn't go very far, which we all love. It's really nice to have him nearby. And working to continue educating women about how to raise children consciously. And when I first began my work with mothers, it was as a result of my starting my private practice in acupressure. And my intention was to work with children. And what ended up happening was that I started attracting a lot of moms who really needed support. They were stressed out and they didn't quite know how to live life differently, but they knew they wanted to. And they had children who were, manifesting some symptoms. But in order for that to get better, we needed to actually address the issues of the parents. So it kind of did a little flip over that at that time many years ago. And that's how I ended up here with this approach.
Nice. So you had to pivot in what you thought you were going to be doing, and then something led you down that route.
Yeah, exactly.
What actually got you started in the work that you're doing, as far as, what brought you to that place of even wanting to get involved in working with kids? Was it just of your own, or was it before then, before you even
No, it was long before then. When I was 16, I was told you need to go out and get a job. And I knew from that moment that I really wanted to work with children. But at that time in the Midwest, it was like, well, no, you can't get a job with children unless you have a special teaching degree and all this stuff. And I'm a very stubborn and persistent person. And so I found a way to get a special job at a preschool daycare center where they created a job for me so I could work with the children. And I became their kind of game specialist. And I went in, and taught the young children games and played with them. And it was just a dream job. And so from the ages of 16 to almost 25, maybe 23, I was working in that environment. And then it just expanded into, regular classroom teacher for preschoolers, and also started doing cooking at that time with the preschool for the kids, snacks and stuff. So it all just kind of unfolded that way.
I see. So that's kind of the foundation you had before going into creating the school that you and your husband created, right?
Yes,
Can
yes.
you tell us a little bit about that experience with?
Sure. Yeah, so that actually came about at the time when we had our son. He was, just a baby when we recognized very clearly that in order for us to raise him the way we wanted to, we knew we couldn't put him into the school options that were available. They just didn't resonate with us. They simply weren't something that we would choose. So we knew from the beginning that we had said no to that.
Mm-hmm.
But then we had to figure out, well, what can we say yes to? And we thought about homeschooling, but that didn't serve us either because we have a career. We wanted to be able to continue our careers. We didn't want to be isolated at home. It wasn't our intention to have a huge family, so it's hard when you have just one child to homeschool, much harder on the relationships. So my husband was in a Feldenkrais training at the time, and he found an article in Mothering Magazine that was about the Sudbury Valley School in Massachusetts.
Mm.
So we looked into that, and we're very excited about what they were offering. And they offered school kits and support to start your own Sudbury model school. So we started to do that.
Wow, that's quite a
Yeah.
thing to take on. I mean, you have your businesses, right? And then you take on creating a whole new school. So it seems like quite a pivot from, right? You kind of had to, did you have to stop what you were doing with your practice and just focus fully on it? Or did you manage to do
No,
both?
we couldn't. We had to still earn a living.
Right.
So yeah, so Yoel, our son, was a year old at the time that we decided to do this. And we had a small group of Reiki students
Mm-hmm.
who were very excited about what we were doing and wanted to support us. So there were 4 of them and 2 of us, and we started a founding group. And so they supported us fully in that first year of planning. And what we ended up doing, Ofer, is my husband, he and I over the years, is that we worked part-time in our career to earn money and part-time at the school. So between the 2 of us, we had 1 income total, right, which supported us financially. And then we also had the school because initially everyone volunteered at the school. There was no money for payment at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we did it. We just, took turns and balanced it out between the 2. And we were both passionate about both parts of our lives. And so it worked really well.
I think you bring up a really valid point, an important point for moms and families who are looking for alternative ways to school their kids. And I myself have looked at many different options, and I think also having only a single child, that it does sort of make homeschooling seem not as rich of an experience, and I can resonate with that. So I wonder what advice you would have for moms who are, they're really questioning the school system. I mean, right now we're in a whole new state where people are all being asked to homeschool.
Yeah.
And right now, as we're recording this, is in, couple months in of everyone being ordered to stay at home because of this pandemic virus that's being, going on. And so what would you say to moms and families who are questioning if taking their kids back to school is the right thing? How do you sit with that? How do you question that?
Well, a couple of pieces come to mind. One is to really look closely at what's important in life. And so many people think that the grade is what's important, making sure that you have all of the correct items ticked off on your list so you can get into college, in this sequence that is a part of our American culture. And that's changing now as well with what's happening with the pandemic, because people are recognizing in the regular education system that they can't do the usual because not everyone is equal in this unique situation in terms of their ability to access the educational system. So they're looking to even that out. And I mean, that's a whole nother direction I could go. But what to me is most important, and what I love to think about in terms of where do you want to be in educating your child? What do you want that child to gain through the educational process? And when I look at my son now as a fully grown adult, the things that I value that he got from being in a Sudbury model school was that he got to learn how to do his own decisions. He was able to make mistakes and not have it ruin his life so that he could learn from his mistakes. He had the freedom to explore and discover what really inspired him and to have a voice. So in a democratic environment, there was this opportunity from even the youngest age child to be able to have a voice heard by the entire community. And this is huge because even now as an adult, though he's employed by someone else, he still has a very strong voice. So he doesn't just go into an environment and then get humiliated or belittled or, you know, the things that beat us down when we're just employed and don't have any control over our lives. Instead, he goes into an environment and says, this is what I want my work environment to be like. And, you know, if it's not working for me, I'm going to go find employment somewhere else. So there's a confidence level in himself, his ability to learn. So when you look at that contrast between going back to school, homeschooling, other environments for education, the key piece to me is really look at your own values. How do you want your child to be as an adult? Do you want them to be self-confident? Do you want them to have the ability to get through challenging times and find a new way of being? You know, those to me are life skills that we don't learn in our usual educational environment, and you will learn in other environments.
Yeah, it seems like there is this new emerging an awareness of parents that it's not just about getting the grade and getting the degrees, because that doesn't always pan out the way you think it will. And our society is changing before we know it, as in what's actually valued, what's really important to offer for a sustainable like living situation, right?
Right.
So I think we're at a really pivotal point to reevaluate our schooling system and like what we think we need for our kids, like what's really valuable. So I think it's important for parents to hear about these other models because some aren't even aware of it. They might have heard of maybe Montessori or Waldorf. Those are kind of the big ones you hear.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't even hear about Sudbury until I knew you guys. And so there's a lot of other ways I think people can get creative about how they foster that development with their kids, right? I mean, and then you have the challenge, right? If you're a working parent, like you guys were, you had to figure out also how to make that work. So I'm just curious, what kind of advice might you have for moms who are feeling overwhelmed and stressed out and trying to do it all? I hear that a lot. They're overwhelmed, they're stressed out, they don't feel like they have any space. And I feel like there's got to be a better way to balance that.
Yeah, there really is. And I think one way is to consider looking at academics from a different perspective.
Okay.
Because many parents feel like they have to practically do the homework for the child in order for the child, especially when they're really young, to achieve the grade. And I think if people can back off from that place and trust the child to learn at their own pace and not be so focused on grades or getting everything done perfectly, then that gives room both to the parent to step back and allow the child to have their own life and their own interaction with their educational experience, but it also frees them both to have a higher quality of interaction as a family because the parent isn't always being the taskmaster. And that's a really important piece. And so when we look at the grade and the whole academic picture, it's important to remember that when you become an adult, you've done your trade school or your apprenticeship or your college education, you're out in the work world, there is not a single person that's going to say to you, what was your GPA when you were in college? I mean, that's just like irrelevant. It has nothing to do with life at all. Instead, they're going to say, what is your idea about this project? I want to hear what skill or expertise you bring to my team, right? And so that's a piece that I think is really, really important. They're not going to ask these questions that seem so important in the growing years in academia.
Yeah.
Right? The other side of that I really love to tell parents, and especially moms, which is if you don't take care of yourself and you don't put yourself at the top of the list and make your own health of primary importance, then what you're doing is you're modeling for your children how to be stressed out adults when they're grown. And many parents don't think about it this way. They, paste a smiley face on. They continue to plow through all of the stress, the long to-do list, hoping that they're doing everything right for the child. The children are incredibly perceptive, and they see right through that. So what children learn is to paste on a smiley face and keep going even when they're miserable. And it becomes this confusion in the child's mind because children are very intuitive and they perceive so much that if they perceive that mommy is stressed out, but she's still smiling and keeping on, going on and doing, and saying, I'm fine, everything's great.
Yeah.
The child stops trusting their own perception because the child is actually perceiving mommy the way she is, which is like stressing out and freaking out and maybe not so happy, or she's sick and she has a cold and whatever her behavior is. And then it creates a disconnect for the child, for themselves.
Yeah.
In trusting, right? In trusting their own perceptions of reality. So it's a bigger deal than people might initially consider.
It's a strong conditioning. I think if you were raised that way, right? So that's something I think about too, is people, we were raised a certain way. And even if you think, oh, that's not how I want to be or do, sometimes it can just kick in as it's automatic because it was conditioned in your subconscious to be that way. So I'm curious, just, if you don't mind sharing, if there was something that you realized that was like an unconscious pattern in you parenting that you had to overcome and, go through where, because I think that's what moms might realize, like, okay, I'm doing that. I'm doing exactly what you're saying, but how do I change that in the moment? So is there something that maybe you noticed about yourself that was a reflection of like how you were parented that you had to kind of face and shift?
Yeah, so it's like, how many hours do you have, Sarah?
Okay, what's the best
There's
one?
A lot, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll try to think of one.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, but this is the thing, is that people don't realize that so much of our personality and the way we interact with the world comes from that place. And what I did was that I recognized as a young mother that every stage that my child went through, every age that he was at, was an opportunity for me to heal myself at that age. Because I would notice that I would feel like or start recognizing my mother in my behavior toward him. And it wasn't just one thing. Maybe it was just a feeling I had. One of the things that came up for me, which was really interesting, was, and it was definitely a reflection of my mother's personality, was that I would let him bully me. So we're all very strong personalities in my family, and my son was also very strong and stubborn as a young person, just as he is as an adult.
Mhm.
And as mothers, we want our children to love us, so we want to please them.
Mhm.
And it's a huge weakness in parenting because we need to be able to place clear boundaries for children. And if we didn't have that modeled for us, then we don't know how to do it for our own children. And one of the huge advantages of being in a democratic environment when he was young is that it really helped to teach him how to respect me, and it helped me to learn how to place the boundaries to demand respect.
Yeah.
And that was just, that one right there was huge.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
could see how it's like it's very draining when you don't have the skills to figure out how to shift something that's off. And I think that it really does take some being conscious of it. And I would
Very.
even say having someone to work with you. I think you're a great person that's helped me actually in my parenting and my husband as well, because while you might be aware of your stuff, like for me it was my dad and how just aggressive he was with not no patience. And so
Right.
even though I'm
Yes.
generally a very patient person, the subconscious programming would come out where I'd feel all of a sudden I'm totally impatient with something that doesn't make sense to not be patient with. So it's like you have to have that awareness to the
Mhm.
tools, right? So are
Yes.
there some tools that you work with people on to like become more conscious of their patterns and to break them, or at least to question them and have more
Yeah.
ability?
Absolutely. Everything that I do, all the tools that I use help people in that way. And so, my mentoring program that I offer is a private personal consultations where we talk about what your issues are, what is it that you're being faced with. I give people assistance with um, parenting in those contexts, but also in terms of their personal issues that they're coming up against, because we can't do one without the other.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's about, a suggestion about a different way to interface with the child, but sometimes it's more about processing the inner wound, the inner child, learning how to parent your own inner child, because many of us didn't have a very positive, supportive parent experience. And so we have to first learn how to do that with ourselves. And so I do a lot of both energy work, like through Reiki or acupressure, but I also do spiritual counseling through A Course in Miracles, helping people to disconnect from the past so that we don't just habitually repeat those patterns unconsciously, and instead, make a break with the past and say, okay, I'm here now. Who do I want to be now? How do I need to think
Yeah.
in order to be here now? So A Course in Miracles is really helpful for that, to help break those thought patterns. But the flower essence therapy also too. So I could kind of, everything that I do because it benefited me. When I first started um, my holistic training, if you will, it was really because I was healing myself.
Yeah.
So everything that I offer in my work, I offer because I've personally benefited from it. I didn't just go take a course and say, okay, now I'm an expert and this is what we do. I I did it for me first. So my whole kind of meandering path around all these different healing modalities
Mhm.
came because I was seeking the next level of my own healing.
That makes a really powerful,
Yeah.
mentor, coach, and healer as well. I think that's what led me to. And so it sounds like you have a lot of resources you use for yourself. Are there any like go-to that you still just kind of, it's like you use it most consistently, or it's your favorite thing that kind of brings you back to yourself and back to what's
Yeah.
most important for you?
Yeah, I would say Reiki and A Course in Miracles are the two
Yeah.
that do that for me. For me, they're a reflection of each other.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Reiki is the energetic expression of the concepts of A Course in Miracles, which is about choosing peace over conflict.
Mm.
And A Course in Miracles provides the thought processes so that I can overcome my wild ego mind that's going on crazy monkey mind journeys and bring me back to a place of being in a state of pure love.
Yeah.
And that's for me, right? Love for myself. Because if I can't have it for myself, then how can I give it to someone else? So both of them help to kind of strip away my own layers of conflict and let go of them and have release from that so that I can feel calm and centered and present again. And like you said, Sarah, you know, those moments where you lose patience and it's like, oh my God, what just happened?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's this knee-jerk reaction we have. And I still do that sometimes. And I
Mm-hmm.
go, whoa, where did that come from? And the key word is it's sometimes. It
Yeah.
is as frequent. And when it happens, I know enough now to be able to go, oh, what has been triggered inside of me? Like one of mine is, or one of my kind of symptoms of being triggered is that I'll start to like notice that things aren't as tidy as I want them to be. And my husband tends to sprawl. He likes to, you know, use every surface and collect things that might be useful in the future, you know, so there's this kind of dance we do.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time it's fine. But then all of a sudden I'll start going, oh, I really want you to like put that away, or can you clean up that mess? And it's me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling anxious about something. And so when I start to do that now, I go, oh, okay, I need to come back here, take a look inside. What's happening for me? What can I do to connect with that, to release it, to move through it, so that I can look around again, not from the critical eye or the fearful eye, but from the place of really love and compassion for both of us.
Yeah.
Because his patterns reflect who he is and what his needs are, and mine reflect me and what my needs are. So we have to both be included in the picture, but I have to first take care of this here.
That's such
Because
a
I
valuable point. Yes, that is so valuable what you say, to notice how you're responding to the outer, right? Whether it's something someone's doing or the environment,
yeah,
and then immediately go to, okay, what's going on in here? What do I need? Because
yeah,
I notice the same thing for me when things are chaotic or all a mess. It's like all of a sudden I start to feel this unsafeness, and same
right,
thing with if I've been getting more annoyed, or you notice yourself lashing out more, being more angry. Now that I have the awareness and the tools, I've noticed it's because I haven't done any self-care. Like I've been
right.
working or getting up and getting straight to the thing. I do have a few things, but it's not the level at which I really need. So I think that's a really important thing. Let's honestly look at, like, okay, what do you need to shift this? Not keep looking outside. Like, see, all this is making me so upset, right?
Yeah, and especially in these times when we're here on this technology and these formats more frequently,
Mm-hmm.
that's having an effect on us.
Yes.
And to be conscious of that, and also to be conscious of the broader world energy. So people like you and I, Sarah, and other people that are, you know, more sensitive out in the world, we feel so much, to be aware that sometimes there's an outer trigger or an outer energetic that's building and I'm feeling it, and that's pushing my buttons.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be able to have discernment is what I call it, which is the ability to really separate out what's me and what's the world.
Mm-hmm.
What's me and what's my son? What's me and the news I read in the paper today? You know, what's me and the client that I just saw? I mean, maybe someone, you know, was excessively anxious or upset and I worked with them and I got pulled into that energetically, I need to disconnect from that,
Yes.
right? And be me, be in me, not be in them. I can support them, but not become them. And that's what compassion is,
Mm,
right?
yes.
And another piece of that that I think is really valuable to pass on to people is, and both Reiki and A Course in Miracles and other things, but primarily Course in Miracles, I think, helped me with this, which is to be able to learn, and this is part of discernment also, be able to be conscious enough to start recognizing when things are affecting me earlier and earlier and earlier, so that what used to be this big blow up, and then I went, oh, oops, I shouldn't have done that, and I did it because of this, then I start to recognize it when it's just this little tickle inside of me, just tiny little noise, right?
Mhm.
And then I go, something's not feeling right. And there's this spectrum, right?
Yeah.
Upon which it's the tiniest little thing or the big blow up, and a lot of space in between for perceiving what's happening. So it's about learning how to walk along that spectrum and recognize earlier and earlier and earlier and earlier when it's a quieter, more subtle indicator. So
Mm-hmm.
then you can respond. And I'm talking about whether it's emotional or physical,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, oh, something's off in my energy, and then 3 days later you come down with a cold. Well, if you'd recognized it then as being the beginnings of that, you could have stopped it, right? So it's that as well. It's not just emotional.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Amy, I want to ask, is there anywhere that you'd like people to go to find out more about you? I know we mentioned your website. We'll have a link for that. Is there anything else you want them to know about what you're up to and, what excites you right now to be doing with people?
Sure. Well, with all of the online stuff we're doing, I've moved a lot of my work online, although I am still seeing people in person when it feels, comfortable and safe for everybody. So I have, classes and things like Taoism study and A Course in Miracles, like you mentioned. The key piece I think I want to do is invite you to reach out to me, because a lot of what happens is that people go and they look at something online and they make a decision when they look at information that's written there, and they say, oh, well, I don't know, maybe not, and they can't quite figure out what's right for them and where do they want to enter and what do they want to do. And I like to have a conversation with people and say, who are you? What do you need? How can I be of service? Because I have such a broad range of tools and experience available that it's easier for me to assist you in discovering how I can help than it is for you to try to figure it out by yourself.
Yes.
So for me, send me an email, pick up the phone, give me a call. Either way you want to do first contact, I welcome. And, and then we can go from there. And if I'm not a fit, then we'll find another solution for you.
Yeah.
But that's really what I like to do, is invite people to really connect so that we can see, how can my work, my knowledge be of benefit to you and your family?
I love it. Yeah, so they can find out more at sugihealth.com.
Yes.
And we'll
Yeah.
have a link to that. And Amy, are there any, I just really appreciate this. I appreciate you sharing this wealth of wisdom you have. Are there any final thoughts or messages you have for those listening right now?
My biggest thought is keep yourself first. Service without sacrifice is one of my little phrases. And I love to encourage people that as you seek your own health and well-being, everyone around you is going to benefit. And really, that's the most important thing to do.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. This is Sarah Wayne with Build Your Village, and I will be sharing more of these interviews coming up. So if you stay tuned, you'll be getting a wealth of wisdom from people who are in my village and in the village to support you. So Thank you so much. Thank you, Amy.
Thanks, Sarah, for having me here. It's been a pleasure. See you soon.